Y nosotros vamos ya con nuestro siguiente invitado internacional, Charles Haddad, Portfolio Manager at Ofi Invest Asset Management. How are you? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Well, I want to start by talking about banks and the current fears and stress in the financial sector that we saw during the last weeks. What do you think was behind this turmoil in the European and US banks?
Well, actually, there are a few reasons. We have to talk about the US and separately about Europe. If you start with the US, the reasons are mainly two things. The first one is a lack of supervision. Let's be frank about it. They simply messed up their supervision. They relaxed too much the rules, and they didn't see, or they didn't want to see what was happening with Silicon Valley Bank or Signature. And the second reason is simply mismanagement from Silicon Valley. I mean, they forgot about the basics of banking, and we saw the result. Their ALM, their asset liability management, was a total mess, and that was the direct reason. And as I said, the lack of supervision from the Fed and the relaxed regulation. These two reasons were the main ones. And obviously, we come from years after relaxed monetary policy, so we have some excess a lot of excess in VCs and in startups. But the main reasons are a mismanagement on asset liability. That's for the US. Now, if you ask me about Europe is totally different. In Europe, the main reason for turmoil was obviously the pollution we had from the US, and secondly, what happened with Credit Suisse. Credit Suisse was going through its, it was, I think, the sixth or seventh restructuring plan in 11 years. And the bank was still suffering from lack of profitability and kind of mismanagement, but mainly a lack of profitability. So the fear started from the fact that people are going to move money out of Credit Suisse because it's not profitable enough, or because you can find other places to put your money, or other opportunities where wealthy people may move their money. Now, the reasons are pretty different between Europe and the US. And lastly, just one last thing, what the Swiss authorities did straight after the merger between Credit Suisse and UBS was a bit damaging. Let's be honest. What they did to AT1s, the perpetual bonds, they forced the conversion of these bonds, so bondholders took a loss on this, and this is not a great thing for confidence. But it's I don't think today that we are on a systemic risk in the US or in Europe. It's a lot of turmoil, but for the time being, it's not a systemic risk today.
Thank you, Charles. I want to ask you also about the profitability of these banks and how the impact of higher interest rates affect this profitability, not only in the profits but also in the balance sheet.
Sure. Now, on higher rates, I think there's an issue with the sound now. On higher rates, we come from, as I said, we had a lot of excess because of low interest rates in the past, but at the same time, banks suffered a lot from low interest rates. Now we came from negative interest rates in Europe and zero in the US to something like 4 or 5% there and around 3% here. So in itself, it's very profitable for banks. For European banks, as a rule of thumb, here we are talking about averages. As a rule of thumb, 1% increase in interest rate will improve profitability for banks. It will improve earnings per share by around more or less 12% over 3 years. So it's positive for profitability. There is no doubt about this. But also at some point you may have a negative impact. I mean, it's not negative. It's simply that profitability may be less than thought before. Why? Because these banks take deposits and they invest the money at higher rates, but at some point they will need to transfer also higher interest rates to their depositors, and at some point maybe they will have to transfer more of this higher interest rate to their depositors. So profitability may not be as good as we thought at the beginning. That's the first point. The second point is simply that today we all have smartphones. It's easy to move money from a bank to another. It's easy to move money to money funds. So this may prove a bit stressful for banks at some point. I don't think it's an issue in the short term, but in the midterm it may force banks to pay depositors more. Let's put it this way. But overall, I mean, interest rates are positive for profitability. Now you asked also about balance sheet. On the balance sheet side, as long as a bank is managing its balance sheet as it should, by this I mean doing the asset liability management in a sound way, it should not have a big impact. Now the negative impact is simply that banks own bonds, and these bonds, well, they lost value because interest rates went up. Is it something very serious? Well, once again, as long as banks are matching maturities and doing rightly their job about ALM, it should not be an issue. But if someone was doing it the Silicon Valley Bank way, well, that may hurt. I think that the supervisor in Europe is doing a good job, and we should not suffer from this. I mean, last famous words, but hopefully the supervisor is doing its job in a tough manner in Europe. So hopefully we should not have a big issue here.
Charles Haddad, portfolio manager at Ofi Invest Asset Management. Thank you for your time and thank you for your analysis.
Thank you.